You are on a floating city in the middle of the ocean. Music is playing. Glasses are clinking. The sun is setting over an endless horizon while thousands of people celebrate, relax, and forget about the world they left behind. Now imagine that somewhere on this ship, behind a closed cabin door, someone dies. What happens next? Does the captain stop the ship? Do they turn around? Do passengers get an announcement? Is there really a secret room on board that no one talks about? Cruise ships are designed to feel like paradise. Pools, theaters, fine dining, casinos, spas. Everything is carefully engineered to keep you entertained and comfortable. But beneath that polished experience is something far more practical. Cruise lines prepare for everything. Storms, mechanical failures, medical emergencies, and yes, death at sea. It sounds shocking at first. But when you think about it, it is not as rare as most people assume. Modern cruise ships carry anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 passengers at a time, sometimes even more. Add another 1,000 to 2,000 crew members. That is the population of a small town, floating for days or weeks without touching land. Now consider this. A significant portion of cruise passengers are retirees. Many cruises are marketed as relaxing vacations for older travelers. Statistically, when you gather thousands of people together, especially for extended trips, natural deaths will occur from time to time. Cruise companies know this, and they are fully prepared for it. But what does prepared actually mean? Let's say it happens right now. A passenger collapses in their cabin. A family member calls guest services in panic. Within minutes, the ship's medical team is dispatched. Every major cruise ship has a fully equipped medical center on board. Some are comparable to small urgent care clinics, staffed with licensed doctors and nurses trained in emergency medicine. The team arrives quickly. They assess the situation. They attempt resuscitation if appropriate. They follow strict international medical guidelines. All of this happens quietly. No alarms echo through the hallways. No dramatic scenes unfold in public areas. Cruise ships are masters of discretion. Crew members are trained to move efficiently without drawing attention. If the medical team determines that the passenger has passed away, a very specific protocol begins immediately. First, the ship's captain is informed. Not eventually. Not casually. Immediately. From that moment on, the situation shifts from medical emergency to official procedure. Time is documented. Reports are started. Internal departments are notified through secure channels. This is no longer just a private tragedy. It becomes a legal and logistical event that must be handled with precision. Here is where things get interesting. Most people imagine chaos. They imagine the ship stopping in the middle of the ocean. They picture passengers gathering and whispering. But in reality, the vast majority of the time, the cruise continues exactly as scheduled. Dinner is still served. Shows still go on. Pools remain open. Because cruise ships are built with systems most passengers never see. Once death is officially confirmed, the body is respectfully prepared according to onboard medical procedures. The crew coordinates with security and hotel management teams to ensure privacy. Nearby cabins may be quietly reassigned if necessary. Corridors can be temporarily cleared using routine operational excuses that do not alarm other guests. Everything is structured to protect dignity and prevent panic. But this leads to the biggest question of all. Where does the body go? It may surprise you to learn that most large cruise ships are equipped with a morgue on board. Yes, an actual morgue. It is not advertised in brochures. It is never mentioned during the welcome speech. But it exists, typically located on one of the lower decks, in an area inaccessible to passengers. These spaces are refrigerated and designed for temporary storage until the ship reaches its next port of call. Capacity is limited, usually designed to hold a small number of individuals. This is not because deaths are frequent, but because ships are prepared for the possibility. And here is something even more fascinating. The ship cannot simply decide what happens next on its own. When a cruise ship sails, it operates under the laws of the country where it is registered. This is known as the flag state. Even if the ship departs from Miami, visits the Caribbean, and docks in Europe, its primary legal jurisdiction is tied to the nation whose flag it flies at the stern. That detail matters a lot, because when a death occurs at sea, international maritime law becomes part of the equation. The captain must ensure proper documentation. The ship's doctor must complete official medical reports. Depending on the circumstances, authorities at the next port may need to be notified in advance. If the death appears to be from natural causes, procedures are usually straightforward. The body remains in the onboard morgue until arrival at the next scheduled port. Once docked, local authorities take over. Documentation is reviewed. The deceased is transferred respectfully to appropriate services on land. But if anything about the situation is unclear, even slightly, the protocol can escalate. Cruise ships have surveillance systems covering most public areas. Security teams preserve footage. Cabins can be sealed if necessary. Access logs are reviewed. Communication records may be examined. All quietly. All methodically. Passengers rarely notice any of this happening. That is by design. Cruise lines operate billion-dollar floating resorts. Their reputation depends on safety, professionalism, and calm control. The last thing they want is fear spreading through the decks. So the system is built around containment and discretion. Meanwhile, guest services focuses on the family. Specially trained crew members assist with communication. They help arrange private spaces away from crowds. They coordinate with shoreside offices to contact relatives back home if needed. There is a dual operation unfolding at once. On the surface, vacation continues. Behind the scenes, a precise chain of procedures activates like clockwork. And here is something most people never consider. The ship does not usually change course. Unless there is a critical reason, such as an ongoing life-threatening emergency before death is declared, the vessel stays on schedule. Diverting a cruise ship costs enormous amounts of money and disrupts thousands of vacations. If medical efforts have concluded and the situation is stable, the journey proceeds. This may sound cold at first. But remember, cruise ships are designed as self-contained environments. They are built to manage extended operations without immediate access to land. That includes medical facilities, storage capabilities, legal documentation processes, and coordination systems with international ports. In other words, nothing about this is improvised. It is planned long before the first passenger ever boards. And that raises another question. How did cruise lines become so structured around something they never publicly discuss? To understand that, we need to look at how modern cruise ships evolved from simple ocean liners into some of the most complex moving structures on Earth. Because once you realize how these floating cities truly function, the idea of a hidden morgue starts to feel less shocking, and more like another carefully engineered detail in a machine designed to handle the unexpected. Modern cruise ships did not start as floating theme parks. They evolved from ocean liners, vessels built to cross vast distances reliably and safely. In the early days of transatlantic travel, ships had to be prepared for isolation. Once they left port, there was no turning back easily. No helicopters on standby. No nearby hospitals within minutes. Self-sufficiency was survival. As technology advanced and cruises became leisure experiences instead of transportation, the entertainment expanded. Water slides replaced cargo holds. Broadway-style theaters replaced smoking lounges. But the backbone of maritime law and operational discipline never disappeared. Every cruise ship today operates like a layered system. Decks full of laughter and music sit above restricted corridors, service elevators, storage rooms, engineering compartments, and medical facilities. Passengers see the polished version. Crew members navigate an entirely different world behind the walls. This hidden infrastructure is what makes controlled responses possible. When a death occurs, the ship activates what is essentially a quiet chain reaction. Security secures the immediate area with subtlety. Medical logs are finalized. The captain communicates with corporate headquarters through encrypted channels. Legal teams on land may already be alerted within hours. Insurance documentation begins. Port agents at the next destination prepare for coordination with local authorities. All while trivia night continues in the lounge. One of the most misunderstood aspects of this process is jurisdiction. At sea, location changes everything. If a ship is sailing in international waters, which typically means more than 12 nautical miles from a country's coastline, the primary legal authority belongs to the ship's flag state. That country's laws govern what procedures must be followed. However, if the vessel is within territorial waters of a nation, that country may have authority to investigate. And when the ship docks, local port officials can require documentation, review medical certifications, or conduct their own examination depending on circumstances. It becomes a complex dance between maritime law, international regulations, and corporate protocol. This is why captains undergo extensive legal training. They are not just navigators. They are responsible for maintaining legal compliance across multiple jurisdictions, often within a single voyage. And then there is the question many people hesitate to ask. What if the onboard morgue reaches capacity? It is rare, but ships are prepared even for that scenario. Voyages are planned with frequent port stops, which reduces the likelihood of extended delays. In extraordinary situations, coordination with nearby ports or authorities can accelerate docking procedures. Again, planning over panic. But let's shift perspective for a moment. Imagine you are a passenger on this cruise. You wake up, head to breakfast, watch the ocean roll by. Somewhere on board, a quiet transfer may be happening through a service corridor you will never walk through. You would not know. Crew members are trained extensively in operational discretion. Service hallways allow movement between decks without crossing guest areas. Separate elevators exist specifically for logistical use. Timetables are adjusted quietly. Even announcements are carefully worded to avoid speculation. Cruise lines understand human psychology. Panic spreads quickly in confined environments. Rumors spread even faster. Maintaining calm is not about hiding reality. It is about preventing misinformation from spiraling. In most cases, no public announcement is made. The family's privacy is prioritized. The event is treated as a private matter unless legal requirements demand otherwise. But sometimes circumstances shift. If authorities determine that further investigation is necessary once the ship docks, certain areas may be temporarily restricted. Crew members may be interviewed. Documentation is handed over. Surveillance data is preserved. Cooperation with law enforcement becomes the top priority. Even then, operations on board usually continue. This balance between transparency and continuity is one of the most complex aspects of cruise management. Now here is another layer people rarely think about. Insurance and documentation. Every passenger agreement includes detailed terms that most travelers never read. These contracts outline procedures for medical events, repatriation, and liability limitations. Cruise lines work with international insurance providers to coordinate transportation of remains back to a home country if required. Repatriation can be a logistical challenge. Different countries have different requirements for documentation, embalming certifications, transit permits, and customs clearances. Cruise companies have dedicated shoreside departments whose sole responsibility is managing these cases with speed and accuracy. It is not improvised. It is institutionalized. And while the legal and logistical systems move forward, there is also the emotional dimension. Ships often assign senior crew members to assist families directly. They may provide private meeting spaces away from public view. They help with communication to relatives on land. They assist with packing belongings. In some cases, they arrange early disembarkation for family members who choose to leave at the next port. Compassion becomes part of protocol. This duality defines the entire system. Cold precision on one side, human sensitivity on the other. Now let's address another misconception. Some people believe that deaths at sea are dramatically more complicated than on land. In reality, because cruise ships operate under such strict frameworks, procedures can actually be more standardized than in some remote land-based situations. Ships conduct regular drills not only for fires and evacuations, but also for medical emergencies. Documentation templates are pre-structured. Communication chains are predefined. Crew members know exactly who to notify and in what order. The reason it feels mysterious is because passengers never see this machinery working. Cruise ships are designed to be immersive escapes from reality. The architecture itself reinforces that illusion. No clocks in casinos. Endless entertainment schedules. Ocean views that make the outside world feel distant. So when people imagine death on board, it clashes with the vacation narrative. But the truth is far less dramatic and far more procedural. It is a system built on anticipation. And here is something that might surprise you even more. In some rare cases, the deceased may have requested burial at sea in advance. Maritime tradition allows for this under strict guidelines and legal approvals. However, this is uncommon on commercial cruise ships and typically requires extensive documentation and coordination with authorities. Even tradition has paperwork attached. The modern cruise industry operates under the scrutiny of international regulators, media, and millions of social media users. Any mishandled incident can spread globally within minutes. That reality has pushed cruise lines to refine their crisis management systems to an extraordinary degree. Everything is documented. Everything is timestamped. Everything is reviewed. So when people ask whether cruise ships have a secret system for handling death, the answer is yes. But secret does not mean sinister. It means structured. It means anticipated. It means that on a vessel carrying thousands of lives across open water, nothing is left to improvisation. And yet, despite all this preparation, one question still lingers. What does it feel like for the crew members themselves? Because for them, this is not a one-time curiosity. It is part of working on a floating city where life, celebration, routine, and loss can exist at the same time, separated only by a few steel walls and a closed door. And understanding that human perspective might be the most revealing part of all. For the crew, a cruise ship is not a vacation. It is home. They live on board for months at a time. They eat there, sleep there, build friendships there. When something serious happens, they are not distant observers. They are the ones responding, documenting, coordinating, and still showing up for their next shift with a composed expression. A doctor may move from certifying a death to treating seasickness an hour later. A guest services officer may comfort a grieving family in the morning and host a welcome event in the evening. An officer on the bridge may finalize legal reports while navigating through narrow coastal waters. Professionalism is not optional. It is essential. Cruise lines invest heavily in training for exactly this reason. Crisis management, communication protocols, privacy standards, and emotional intelligence are all part of preparation. The goal is simple. Handle the unexpected with stability. Because stability is what keeps a floating city functioning. By the time the ship reaches its next port, coordination is already in motion. Port agents are informed. Documentation is prepared for local authorities. Transportation is arranged according to legal requirements and family wishes. The transfer from ship to shore happens with discretion and formality. For most passengers, the day looks normal. They step off the gangway excited for excursions. They take photos. They explore a new city. Few realize that, below the surface of operations, a highly structured process has just concluded exactly as designed. And that is the key word. Designed. Cruise ships are engineered around redundancy and foresight. Backup generators. Backup navigation systems. Backup communication channels. Medical facilities. Refrigerated storage. Legal frameworks that activate automatically when thresholds are met. Nothing is accidental. When you zoom out, the mystery fades and the architecture becomes visible. A cruise ship is not just a resort. It is a regulated maritime entity governed by international law, corporate policy, and decades of operational refinement. So let's close the loop. If someone dies on a cruise ship, the vessel does not descend into chaos. It does not broadcast dramatic announcements across the decks. It does not abandon its itinerary without cause. Instead, a quiet sequence begins. Medical confirmation. Captain notification. Documentation. Secure and respectful transfer to a private facility on board. Legal coordination with the appropriate authorities. Support for the family. Arrival at port. Formal handover. All of it structured. All of it anticipated. The ocean may be vast and unpredictable, but the systems operating on these ships are anything but. That contrast is what makes modern cruising possible. Thousands of people dancing under the stars, unaware of the complex infrastructure humming beneath their feet. Elevators moving through hidden shafts. Officers reviewing compliance checklists. Departments communicating through secure channels. A floating city that prepares for every chapter of the human experience, even the ones it never advertises. And perhaps that is the most surprising part of all. Not that cruise ships are ready for death at sea, but that in an environment built for escape and celebration, there is still room for quiet professionalism, dignity, and order when reality finds its way on board. Out on open water, far from shore, even the unexpected has a plan. And the ship keeps sailing. If this video was worth your time, a like is the best way to support our channel. And if you'd like to be here for what comes next, subscribe and stay with us. There is always more ahead. As always, stay curious, and I'll see you at sea.